Blade 2 came out 20 years ago, but this week's episodes featuring him, sadly, don't feature anyone as cool as Wesley Snipes. This is the Superhero Pantheon. Now on this podcast, we will take 3 episodes of the Fox Kids version of Spider-Man that aired in the mid-90s and discuss review. This is not for Pantheon eligibility, but a fun side project. My name is Jerome Cuson. You can find me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. You can find additional episodes of this podcast through Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast apps through the real world. We strongly encourage you to leave a 4 or 5-star review so as to help people discover this show and the great work that the folks at The Real World are doing. If you would like to interact with us or send feedback, you can do so by following us on Twitter at Hero Pantheon. My co-host for this week and every week will be Brian DeBrain. He can be found on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. And Brian, this week we are getting 2 more Marvel characters prominently featured, that being the Punisher and that being Blade. But of course, because this is this is TVY7, this is not TV14 or MA, we get very, I would say, different versions of the character. And Brian, I think that the thing that we've learned in this project as we've gone through it, because we've had Ray Harryhausen mentioned, we've had Bela Lugosi referenced. It is very clear to me that these writers and maybe even the people in charge of the animation, they are big horror fans.
Absolutely, because last week when they cut to be continued, Spider-Man grows 4 extra arms, like just total body horror. And then, what it to be continued. You know what I mean? That's how you do it, to be continued. So you got that drama and that suspense for the next episode. And now we get this, man, it's crazy. He's got to cut his shirt, poor guy, to fit the arms through. Imagine all that extra weight, too, to differentiate. God, that's got to be, oh, man, that's got to be just truly horrible. Just truly horrible for Spider-Man. And he's going through all these physical changes and probably mental changes too, because the whatever that mutant DNA inside of him is just altering his DNA, and it's gonna get worse by the end of the episode. Because the end of the episode, boom, he turns into this giant monster, the spider monster they're calling him, and it's just horrific. And I love the way that they kind of had to push the limits, because they had this, they can't go show excessive, gory, nasty, monster type stuff. I mean, they had to have their limitations on Blade when they animated him. I get it. You have your limitations, but the way they pushed the limit with him, it looked horrifying. Even as a kid, even looking at it now, it's like that face is like a giant head. It's almost like something out of The Thing. So very impressive stuff, man. I love that. I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but this is that horror you're talking about. And then, man, just what a transition, and from going to oh my God, my stomach hurts, and all these episodes later to developing into that monster. That's a great buildup. I feel like, and it's been building and building and building each episode, which I love about this season in particular, because this is that backbone to it. It's this DNA storyline of Spider-Man, and now we got the Punisher coming after Spider-Man, because I guess Spider-Man is probably going to be number 1 still. Punisher all of a sudden wants to get on the good side of the public, I guess, or I guess it's not really him. It's Microchip. He's trying to get on the good side of the public, which is kind of crazy because he sounds like Wayne Knight, and Wayne Knight ended up being Microchip in Punisher Warzone. So just weird little castings like that. I don't know if they had this idea in mind, because they sound very, very similar. So I was kind of surprised at that. But again, they had a kind of kid-friendly Punisher. so that's fine with me. He's got more tech gadgets and stuff like that. Really
Yeah,
crazy tech.
he basically they basically turned him into Batman, and I think that's I think the voice is fine. I think the character design is fine, but the techie stuff, I mean, that's not really the Punisher. And I mean, look, I think there are fundamentally just some characters that are not appropriate for kids. Like, I think I think all versions of Superman should be kid friendly. I think you can do a kid friendly version of Batman. The Punisher and Deadpool, they have to be PG-13, TV-14, TVMA, or R-rated. But what I'm hearing is that if we're talking about body horror and things like that, what you're saying, Brian, is that Sam Raimi should be brought in to direct the next Spider-Man with Tom Holland. They should do this storyline, and this is how they should officially bring Mahershala Ali and John Barenthal into the MCU. Is that what I'm hearing?
Didn't we have this discussion when we talked about Morbius?
I mean, maybe, but Morbius sucks, so I don't really want to have that conversation. But I mean, just imagine. I mean, it would be even cooler if it was Wesley Snipes, honestly. But I would accept Mahershala Ali as Blade. But yeah, I mean, just how cool would that be if Sam Raimi came in and directed like The Man Spider, and you basically had this horror version. And I know that Doctor Strange is supposed to be a horror movie, but you're saying that just really made me want that to happen.
Listen, it could have happened because, I mean, if let's say Spider-Man 4 was never canceled, he could have made 5 and 6. You know, it could have built up to that. I mean, I'm sure in the back of his mind he had these kind of ideas. You know what I mean? Because we saw that horror scene that he did in Spider-Man 2 when Doc Ock like goes off and kills all those people in the hospital, like in that horrifying way. So it's in him. And I know like there's these stories out there with like Spider-Man you could do. I mean, God, this is a kid show in the 90s and we're getting these horror vibes. So there's a lot of potential out there for like a crazy horror Spider-Man type storyline. And I don't know. Maybe this Morbius thing is, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And I'm talking MCU movies now, but we'll see how that connects. Because I know like this fits perfectly with that, especially with like a vulnerable Tom Holland right now. But then again, I want to see him in college. You know, I want him to get that fucking GED. The kid's been in high school since 2015. Jesus Christ. But anyway, yeah, man, this version of Punisher is cool for me because like as a kid, it's like, okay, well, as a kid, I didn't really know like he was this violent character. I just thought, okay, he's just kind of this military guy. He's a little he's a little off, he's a little crazy, but that's just him. So, but then when you realize his history and you watch the Netflix shows, yeah, they definitely
They are
had
not,
it down.
sir. They are not Netflix shows anymore.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's right. I had to turn on the
You,
TV 14 thing on my Disney Plus now.
you can now watch the animated Spider-Man series and the Punisher in the same place, along with all of your favorite Disney movies.
Yes, yes, that's the big change now. I forgot. That's a Freudian slip, if it ever was one. But yeah, I mean, you see the comparison, and I get it. But as a kid, it just makes sense because he's doing cool tech stuff. And despite the fact that he's like, I don't know, got a parachute, jumping off buildings and stuff like that, I know that's a little not Punisher-like, but
I mean, they basically made him G.I. Joe. That's
yeah.
what
And eventually, like Natasha Romanoff and like Hawkeye kind of became those types of tech kind of gadget kind of heroes. But again, they had to make the change, so I'm cool with that. It's just the whole thing about him becoming I don't know, a hero in the public eye. It sounds like he doesn't even give a shit. It's just more about the other guy wanting that for him.
I do appreciate that he's still a vigilante and that the criminal runs away from him instead of having to be shot and potentially killed by the Punisher. That's still, I mean, that vibes with the character, so I very much appreciated that. We do get Spider-Man realizing that indeed he did decide to take the serum too early, as he has his extra arms. Brian, there's so many jokes and there's so many things that I could say about what Peter Parker could do with those extra arms, but I think your statement about the extra weight, it makes a lot of sense, and just the dynamics of the extra arms are just very curious to me. And I do like the scene when he cuts the holes in his costume haphazardly. That's pretty amusing to me. The one thing I will say, like, I understand that he's trying to hold back his identity, but he's not a good boyfriend, man. He is just not a very good boyfriend at all, because he is just leaving Mary Jane in the lurch.
Oh, it gets worse in 2 episodes. Once we get to the Morbius episode, it gets worse. Where he did some really nuts things you're not supposed to do in front of your girlfriend, for sure. But yeah, that's just Peter, man. That's just Peter. And then again, this episode too, I realized it seems like I don't know. Every episode, he's like, "I'm sorry, Aunt May. I'm sorry, Aunt May. I'm sorry, Aunt May." But that's just Peter. So
Yeah, I mean the Joys are trying to have that double persona, so we do get the Punisher going after Spider-Man and basically seeing Spider-Man as a threat, which he's really not wrong. Felicia Hardy also not very happy with Spider-Man. I guess you could say in this episode, Spider-Man has no way to go home, huh?
oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, he ends up going home and sneaking in, which is amazing because I think he would have heard the guy come in the fucking second floor. But whatever. I thought that was also amusing too that he prints out this like map or something of where to find Morbius because Morbius is still like on the run, and that's kind of the chase where it's become. It's like Punisher's after Spider-Man, Spider-Man's after Morbius, but also the FBI's after Punisher. So you got this crazy chaotic layering of like chaos going on, and then on top of that, you got like this amazing color printer in 1995 in Peter Parker's room, which I was just blown away by because there was no holes on the side of the paper. It was a nice, clean copy, almost like a FedEx or a Kinko's copy in '95, straight in your room. I was really impressed.
I was too. We get some good ethics, some good journalism ethics discussions going on. Is Jameson, because of what Punisher is doing, doesn't really have a problem with him going after Spider-Man. But Robbie does tell Jameson that they can't do that because Punisher is known for using legal force. I will say, if you read a lot of mainstream journalism, Brian, they don't have a problem with war or committing violent acts. So J. Jonah Jameson is at least consistent with the rest of the mainstream American media.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think of Rupert Murdoch, man, just in that exact moment. But hey, like I said earlier episodes, I think they were going for like a Ted Turner kind of vibe, CNN. But little do they know, Rupert Murdoch is what they were really channeling and going for. And Jameson being that cold-hearted, not well, he can't be cold-hearted. He loves his kids and he's got that relationship. But I mean, goddamn, he just doesn't give a fuck. He just really hates Spider-Man. You know what I mean? And that was just so funny, man. The way he was just accepting Punisher and just like his record and all that kind of shit. But also too, like it's amazing how they can get like all this exclusive information about somebody without being in the FBI.
I mean, it is truly amazing between the hacking last week and the FBI and CIA and how that all works. It's pretty fascinating. We get a repeat of the flashback with Uncle Ben being killed, and that was, I mean, I guess because they may have new viewers or.
I think they were short on time. Like my guess is they were short on like.
I mean, you may very well be right.
Yeah, it's like 30 seconds short on like frames. We need to fill something in. And then, of course, it leads to our discussion about pro wrestling and Marvel again, which is like, it's a shoot, which is weird.
Okay, so we need to have this conversation because in the world of Spider-Man, the mid-1990s Spider-Man, pro wrestling is real. And there's a distinct possibility that it is also real in the Tobey Maguire universe as well. And I am very disappointed that did not come up in the third Spider-Man movie. That, like, what if they were having a conversation and Tobey Maguire's like, pro wrestling is real, and Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland are like, what?
Yeah, I know. But the other thing too is like, why is it this trope in like, maybe it's because the Looney Tunes did it, but like the 1, 2, 3, and they're not even on top of the guy. Can they not put that? Like, is that like a thing they can't show? They have to just have the guy lying out, count 1, 2, 3. Like, that's not even a rule in wrestling. Oh man, but again, this little sidetrack. But again, it's just wrestling is a shoot in the Marvel universe.
What about if in Tobey Maguire's world, Randy Savage becomes Bonesaw? What if in Andrew Garfield, he stayed with the WWF in 1994, and in Tom Holland's universe, he actually did go to WCW? Like, what if that's how it worked?
Oh, I've thought about this. Believe me, I've thought about these weird tangents.
And I'm sure you've done all of this sober and not with substances.
With Scott Hall passing recently, I found out some crazy. I know we're sidetracking. Some crazy info that he potentially could have replaced Larry Zbyszko in the Dangerous Alliance that summer, but instead jumped to the WWF. So who knows what could have happened there?
Yes, the multiverse is real, as we have seen in so many movies and TV shows recently. Spider-Man realizes that Morbius is back and not in his human form. Spider-Man is also doing everything that he can to avoid both Aunt May and Mary Jane. He even gets captured by Punisher at one point. The three, Morbius, Punisher, and Spider-Man, all end up together. And although Spider-Man does want to help Morbius and get him help, Morbius fights him anyway. So then we eventually get Punisher firing a huge RPG and a bomb exploding. And as Punisher chases after Spider-Man, he fires a rocket at him, and Spider-Man falls and crashes through the roof of a warehouse. And Brian, is this the best to be continued of all time on this show?
I think it is so far. I mean, it's like back-to-back episodes. I mean, it's like, Jesus. The end of last week, he grows 4 arms. The end of this week, he grows into this giant monster, and the hero is gone. So it's like, what do we do the next week? So it's great. I mean, it's one of the best. I mean, I remember this as a kid.
It's good serialized storytelling, which
it's great. I mean,
you didn't really get it on a lot of kids' TV shows. Like Batman was very much an anthology, and I mean, Batman is an incredible series, but they almost never had they did have a couple 2-parters, and I think they did have some good cliffhangers for those, but for the most part, Batman was like about telling singular stories, and Spider-Man is very serialized, which is pretty surprising for a TV show in 1994, but it is appreciated, and I think it's made it a lot easier to engage, because even if the episodes are not always great, there's enough in there to keep me invested. And even though this was not my favorite episode, I really did love the transition. It was a great ending. I did like some of the interactions between Punisher and Spider-Man. The Morbius stuff doesn't really do a whole lot for me, but I really did appreciate that. And I do wish that Mary Jane was more of a factor, just in terms of what's going on and not just being Peter Parker's girlfriend. But I do appreciate that she is justifiably angry at him for constantly abandoning her.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 for me, but we're gonna get to that in the Morbius, or not the Blade episode towards the end. That they're building another storyline for the 3rd season that we'll get to in a few minutes.
All right, so let's go to the next episode, which is Duel of the Hunters, and in this case, we get the Punisher backing away from the mutated Spider-Man. Spider-Man is throwing acid at people, or I guess he's Man Spider, not Spider-Man. But yeah, it's pretty amazing, and we see how powerful the Man Spider is, as he is able to easily throw Punisher across the room. And yeah, just a pretty dramatic opening scene. Eventually, Spider-Man crashes through the wall of the warehouse, and he swings away and is spotted by a construction worker who is now terrified of this giant humanoid spider.
Man, what a just beautiful, like, the way it's drawn out, and the way that, like, there's lightning in the background when he moves. Like, if he's moving through the city, there's these lightning flashes, and it just makes it more just like, just monstrous, man. So they did a really good job, and it's building and building to this, like, oh my God, what do we do? Like, he obviously can't talk, so that perspective of, like, the voiceover is gone for this episode pretty much until the end. So I think from, like, a narrative standpoint, it's pretty much centered around Mariah. Would you say?
Yes, I would say that this is very much focused on Mariah and Punisher, because it was jarring to not have the voiceover, because I think I've just gotten so used to it, and I think it is a good narrative device, especially because these episodes are so short. So in some ways, I think it is a justifiable narrative shortcut. And again, I think that differentiates it from some of the other animated shows like the X-Men and like Batman. Like Batman, I mean, I know we did get a voiceover in the recent movie, but that's not really what Batman is about necessarily. But yeah, I very much appreciated the fact that we did get to engage with the other characters a little bit, including Mariah Crawford, realizing that she has basically helped Peter Parker morph into this Man Spider. And at this point, Punisher decides that, I'm gonna hunt monsters, and Punisher decides that he is going to go during the day as Man Spider goes in the subway to sleep. So Punisher is going to wait until the evening to hunt his monsters. And in the next scene, that is when Aunt May and Mary Jane have their interactions, and once again, Peter Parker is completely gone. And in this case, Aunt May believes it was Spider-Man that did something to him, which she is technically not wrong. Mary Jane tells May that she is going with her to the police because she does care for Peter. So Aunt May is so close. She's just so close.
Yeah, I would have figured it out by now, I think. But that's just me. But they have to have that drama, and yeah, it's just like she can't realize she's talking about one and the same person. Almost, I don't know. But that's the charm of it, right? That's the charm of it. It just makes you reflect. It's like, God, I'm so glad they just let Aunt May know off the bat in the first movie and then the new one. So that just takes away all these like weird, awkward, like, come on, man. Don't you like? Oh, come on, man. It's obviously him, man. That kind of thing. So I get it.
We also get, since this is Duel of the Hunters, where is the other hunter? Well, we get Mariah meeting Sergei at the airport as his plane lands, and now we've got Kraven and the Punisher being a part of this episode and giving chase to the Man Spider. We get Felicia Harding in her apartment, staring at a photo of Michael Morbius. Morbius actually flies into a nearby building and is creepily watching Felicia. Just, again, the Morbius stuff just does absolutely nothing for him. Morbius wants blood, but realizes that he also needs to cure himself, but he also thinks that he might need help to do it. So yeah, we do get a little bit of Morbius in this episode, and this is all going to be building to a head.
So that one point, he's standing on the building, and Felicia Hardy's like at the other building across. He's like, "Oh my God, that's Spider-Man! He's got Morbius, or he's got Michael." And then I'm just like, we can clearly see from even our perspective that it's not Spider-Man. It's a dude in white, and he's got a coat on. That's not Spider-Man. So that scene kind of threw me off. I was like, how is everyone thinking this is Spider-Man? We can clearly see it's not Spider-Man. And then fucking they see the TV, and Mariah's like, that's Morbius on the TV. I don't know. They just kind of, that scene kind of was just so wonky to me. But I think once we get Kraven in, that's where the last 10 minutes start clicking, like really, really clicking. Because, it's like the Hunter versus Hunter thing. And they could have just easily gave in and say, hey, we'll give Kraven the serum one more time for this episode and let him get really crazy again. And what happened in season 1. They didn't do that. He actually relied on his actual human prowess and abilities. You know what I mean? He didn't need that extra juice to get him to where he needed to find Spider-Man. So I thought that was a really good thing, because I thought, oh man, he's going to take the serum. And then I realized, wait a minute, he never takes the serum again. So I'm glad they left him human and left him as like this, he does a full babyface turn. So that's really cool. That's something I really forget about Kraven, is that he has this, full circle babyface turn and helps Peter Parker, even protecting his identity, I think, and all that kind of thing. So I was really surprised, and I'm glad that he was teaching Punisher some stuff along the way, like little things like, don't shake the web, you're going to give away our location and stuff like that. And then identifying, this is a little, U.S. history trivia note, but like the World Trade Center bombing in 91?
Yes.
Yeah, so there was the bombing in the parking lot in 91, but he was able to identify the same powder that was in the parking lot that was in the webbing of Spider-Man, or the Man Spider.
Yeah, so there was some weird World Trade Center stuff going on, which made me go a little, that's a little weird.
But it's just timing. I mean, they didn't know, obviously, but I mean,
of course. I mean,
yeah.
I would assume that by the time they started production on this episode, that the what happened in 93, the bombing of 93 had already happened by the time it was in production. So this could not have been new to them. But I mean, the World Trade Center really was iconic imagery for such a long time, and you would see it in the opening of shows like Law and Order. So we do get a lot of interactions between Punisher and Kraven as they are battling the Man Spider, but eventually we can't go 2 straight episodes, Brian, without having Spider-Man. So as Man Spider lifts Punisher above his head, he covers his body in webbing, And eventually, at the end, Mariah Crawford walks in, tells Punisher that the creature is her friend and that he needs help. Punisher, because he's a vigilante and kind of a dick, does not want to help. But Mariah does eventually step up, and they are able to give him a cure. And we are back to Spider-Man being Spider-Man. But of course, the mutation, as we will learn in the next episode, is still a part of him, and he will need to go in for a treatment every 24 hours. But for now, we will get Spider-Man back in his regular form. And we do get some peace between Punisher and Kraven as well. It's almost like they teased a spinoff, though, with their interactions. But of course, there were no animated universes as directly connected like there are now. So, of course, that did not happen.
Yeah, that's what it felt like too. And it just, God, imagine that, like a Punisher, Kraven the Hunter spinoff show where they're hunting animals, criminals, God knows what. But that would have been so fun. And you can still do things like that. You know what I mean? So I like this idea of like them doing crossovers and then us getting inspired by these crossovers years later. And like, God, we can do this. We can put these characters together and have some fun. So I'm glad they had that ending. I like Mariah pointing out that Punisher's the one that's the real monster. You know what I mean? He's a victim. I love the fact that everyone knows the Punisher's history all of a sudden, which that's just animated world. And then Mariah goes like, your son and your wife were victims, and I was like, oh, that's a deep cut. And then they cut to the kite, which of course they can't show their murders, obviously, but the kite falling was some pretty deep stuff, man.
Honestly, the fact that they showed the kite falling is darker than if they showed the kid actually being killed.
That's what it feels like. That's what it really feels like, because that was like, wow. And then they did this like sad face in the kite.
Yeah.
With the water.
Oh God. Yeah. That was rough, man. That was rough.
So I mean, if you really want to get down to the dirty details of the Punisher, go watch the show on Disney Plus. And then watch this scene and you'll get it, because it was just such a deep cut, but really well done. And then it didn't have that awesome to be continued, because this kind of had some closure to it. But we still got Morbius in the background, and we still got, like you said, that he's going to transform every 24 hours now. So now you got to race against the clock now. So it's all these other elements of chaos, but the problem is still there.
Yes, for sure. And of course, this leads us to where we are in the next episode, as with Morbius being a vampire, it's a great time to bring in another Marvel character 3 years before the movie came out. We have Blade. I just want to say up top, I don't know how they chose the voice actor. I thought the voice actor for Blade and even the character design were both very, very bad. And this is probably one of my least favorite episodes for that reason.
In terms of the voice, they went too old. Like immediately I noticed, like, oh, they went too old, and they went too stern and like angry, instead of like kind of the cool and relaxed version we know of Blade, with Wesley Snipes. But that's just Wesley Snipes kind of, encompassing that role and becoming that role and becoming like the standard for that role. Before that, we didn't really. I mean, all we had was the comics, and it's like, okay, he's a vampire killer. But I didn't even know. Like, I don't even know if he really has a laser sword in the comics, because I was like, what the a laser? He's got a lightsaber. Well,
it's the same reason that every gun is a laser gun, and they shoot blasters instead of bullets. I'm sure it's the same principle, that Blade couldn't actually have a sword, so that's why they gave him what amounts to a lightsaber.
That's what I was thinking, because I was like, man, I was like, whoa, what are we doing here? This is a fucking lightsaber. I also appreciate the fact. I mean, this was pretty cool. Like, I don't know why they haven't done this in modern vampire movies, but that garlic gas that just kind of disintegrates vampires, and they killed that one vampire at the beginning of the episode, and she kind of like disintegrated. So I was like, oh, have we seen that in like real vampire movies? Like, I don't recall that at all. It's like we automatically have to go for the stake to the heart, which they kind of didn't imply, but they showed some stakes going into the wall in this episode. But I thought the garlic gas was pretty gnarly, and then kind of Spider-Man taking that technology and kind of using it to catch Morbius in the web. But I thought that was pretty cool. But I can't recall that. But I would love to see that in a modern vampire movie.
Yeah, I really like the garlic spray, and I hope that they give that to Marshall Ali's character. I think that would be a ton of fun, actually. And I think so. So it's weird to me that Spider-Man got the cure from Mariah, but in this episode, he is going for his treatment every 24 hours to Dr. Connors, and that Mariah really isn't mentioned. And I thought that was a little strange, that it felt like there was either some sort of a continuity error or something of that nature. Why is Mariah giving him the cure and then like he's going in for neogenic treatment by Dr. Connors? Like, I wish they had kind of connected the dots for us there a little bit more.
Yeah, my impression was that I think that they needed more episodes, and they still had Morbius alive, so we're like, oh shit, do we still have him be mutating or whatever? And I think they just extended it because it implies that they cured him at the end of the last episode, right? Almost completely, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, these treatments. So maybe it's because Dr. Connors has access to that machine or whatever. But yeah, and I really wish we had like a scene with all three, like Mariah, Spider-Man, and Connors. I think that might be coming up. I don't know. But that would have been more interesting and more connecting the dots.
So we do get a little bit of Blade's history as well, and we get introduced to Abraham Whistler a little bit later. And I mean, again, it's not Chris Christopherson, so I mean, this is a really hard one for me just because Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson, like, the Blade movies are not perfect, but to me, I'm going to have a really hard time not associating those characters with those roles. And Brian, I have to say, if they cast Wesley Snipes to be Whistler in the next one, I would not be unhappy.
Oh, believe me, that's what a lot of people want. But I'm shocked that you did not recognize that the voice of Whistler was Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't either. Like, usually I'm the person that's really good with voices. And yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised given the quality of voice actor that is on the show. But yeah, we got Malcolm McDowell. What would you say he's best known for?
See, I want to say Alex from A Clockwork Orange, but in terms of like his voice, I know this is bad, but I just hear the Rob Zombie Halloween remake in my head. I'm going, Michael. But that's just because like that's the voice that I hear, and it's the more modern Dr. Loomis, and you know I love the Dr. Loomis character so much, so that's probably why it sticks out so much for me. But in terms of like pop culture wise, I mean, it's got to be Alex from Clockwork Orange because that's the one that's made fun of the most.
We do get Peter being a bad boyfriend again as he continues to avoid Mary Jane and continues to avoid confronting his issues, and is even seen later walking up to Felicia and comforting her, and Mary Jane is watching him. And I'll be honest, Brian, I don't blame Mary Jane for her reaction and deciding to go out with Harry Osborn on what amounts to a date. I think that Mary Jane's behavior in that circumstance is completely justifiable because look, Spider-Man may be a hero and I know that he's going through a lot, but he is being a bad boyfriend.
Yeah, this is the scene I was talking about here. Where this is a big no-no. You don't go up to a grieving friend who may have some romantic attraction to and start hugging her in front of your current girlfriend, dude. Like, what the?
Especially
oh my God.
because you've been actively avoiding her, so that's what makes it so bad.
Oh, and I get it. He feels guilty because he helped turn Morbius or whatever, and he feels but still, like, what are you doing? It's like he completely just shut off Mary Jane from his brain at that moment, and completely just forgot the fact that they were sitting together in the room anyway. And then he just chases Felicia Hardy out the door, man. Like, oh my God, what a dumb move, dude. You're fucked. And then this is kind of teasing season 3. So she ends up going to dinner with Harry Osborn, right? That's going to lead into that whole goblin thing and the big cliffhanger of season 3. So that they're again teasing out these storylines, and you can tell there's going to be that romantic tension and like that romantic triangle going on right there, and that's going to be a big deal going into season 3. So I'm excited. I'm glad that they did that because that's a big moment between the three of them at the end of season 3.
Yeah, I mean, I am very much looking forward to seeing how this all works and how this all connects together. We do get Blade confronting Morbius as Morbius breaks into the lab and steals the Neogenic Recombinator, but Morbius is, of course, still very powerful as he has been consuming blood. Spider-Man and Blade have some tension between them, but they eventually decide that they need to search for Morbius together, to end the episode, and this is going to continue in the next one, and we will come back to this storyline next week. So we have Spider-Man in the midst of being concerned about transforming, but also now being in another alliance. He's been in alliance with the X-Men, he's been in alliance with the Punisher, and now he is going to be one with Blade.
Yeah, and more importantly, Whistler, because I love that interaction of Whistler talking to Peter Parker when he's sticking to the wall and he's telling him the history of Blade. And yeah, I love that little background they did there, and it just summed up everything you needed to know, because that little background is pretty much all the background they gave you in the original Blade anyway, right? Like that 1 minute.
Which is fine. I mean,
yeah,
we don't
that's all you need.
Not everything needs to be Batman Begins. I love the fact that Blade tells the story in 2.5 minutes in the opening credits, and then we go right into the nightclub, which is, again, as we mentioned before, is one of the greatest scenes in any superhero movie, period, end of story.
Totally. And yeah, it's making me think, like, I think Wesley Snipes really, really, really had a hand in shaping that character based on what we see here. Because, like, this character's more of like a biker, you know what I mean? Like a biker kind of guy. And I don't know. He's got some weird
Blade
stuff.
is another character that you really can't do unless it's a PG-13 or R-rated version. Like the X-Men, again, because you've established the animated universe and things like that, you can have X-Men that are, more so for kids, I would say. And even like if Captain America were on this show, or Iron Man, or Hulk, like I think they could survive on this. They're the Fantastic Four. Like I think they would be acceptable, but characters like Blade and Moon Knight and Deadpool and Punisher, like they don't really work out. Like Daredevil could pretty well be a factor as well, because I know that there is the R-rated versions have kind of been the best, but I think you can do a version of Daredevil that is almost kid friendly. But just by the nature of what Blade does, like Blade and Punisher are inherently violent characters, so you can't really do them without bastardizing the character. So that's what made these 3 episodes tough. But I really did like the Man Spider stuff. I love the design of the character. I love the fact that we basically take out our main character for an entire episode. And even if I don't think it's perfect, I do like that it kind of changes the show up. And I do like that. I'm amused by how bad of a boyfriend Peter Parker is. Like, it is it's interesting character development, because he is a superhero, but he's also kind of bad at what he does in terms of being a human being.
Yeah, that's definitely going to play in the next couple seasons for sure, because that's definitely one of his major weaknesses for sure. But hey, we still got more episodes of the same storyline. It's still the Neogenic Nightmare, and it's going to keep going until the end. So we got more Morbius coming up, and yeah, more plasma, as they say, because they can't say sucking blood. So there you go.
For sure. So next week we will return to this storyline as we will be continuing our discussion of season 2. Brian, any final thoughts before we head on out of here?
Yeah, man, just if you can get past the whole like violent, character nature of Punisher and just kind of see it as like this early 90s tech version, for kids, it can be fun. I mean, even though if you see the 80s version, which is even, that's more of a truer character of the Punisher, you'll still enjoy it if you kind of hold back a little bit, because him with that parachute, I was just kind of laughing inside because I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are amusing moments, I will say. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So for Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you again next time.
Ooh, I'm so scared. I may start biting my fingernails. And man, have I got fingernails.